Steve, never a surprise to have North Korea heighten tensions ahead of a big event. What are we expecting from Kamala Harris's visit here?
Well, obviously, the Vice President, Kamala Harris, is hitting on the number of hot-button issues for the United States in the Western Pacific, in particular in visits to Japan and now South Korea today. She's touched on securing of semiconductor supply chains. She lent some jawboning to support of Taiwan and some what she called disturbing behavior by China in the East and South China Sea. So now she moves her talks from Japan to South Korea. She will make a visit to the demilitarized zone. You're seeing pictures here of that border between the two Koreas. We did get those two short-range ballistic missile tests last night into the seas off the east coast of North Korea. As North Korea sees Kamala Harris' visit to South Korea as a provocative move, obviously they return that provocative move in kind. This comes, of course, as the USS Ronald Reagan, the aircraft carrier, which is already deployed in the Western Pacific, made a port of call in South Korea ahead of war games with the South Korean counterparts, also ahead of what the South Korean spy agency says will likely be Kim Jong-un's 7th nuclear test, upcoming, perhaps a very specific date, sometime between October 16th to November 7th. So lots at stake, of course, for U.S. diplomatic efforts in the Western Pacific ahead of Joe Biden's visit to the Asia Pacific, where he'll go to the G20 meeting in Bali, then the APEC summit in Bangkok in November.
This is really interesting because we've also got the White House hosting this unprecedented two-day summit of Pacific Island nation leaders. Wang Yi did his big 10-day tour of the region earlier this year. Yes. So is this an attempt to try and woo them away from China's influence?
Absolutely, because there's a fear, of course, in Washington that many of these Pacific Island nations, perhaps ignored by the White House, ignored or not respected necessarily even by Australia, are going to move more into China's orbit. We saw that, as you mentioned, Heidi, in May when the foreign minister of China would rarely make visits to Pacific Islands. He went to the Solomon Islands and he signed an unprecedented security agreement with the Solomon Islands. So absolutely, the United States is trying to make up for lost ground and gained ground by the Chinese diplomatically in the Pacific Islands by hosting this summit, two-day summit, and offering support beyond just security, things that these South Pacific Island nations need, like help with climate change, technology, and healthcare. We'll have to see what comes of it. But again, 11 island nations, including Kiribati, Papua New Guinea, Vanuatu, and others will be attending this White House summit. You know, the United States knows the importance of the supply chains and the sea lanes through the South Pacific, as they, of course, encountered that against the Japanese in World War II. So, yes, again, these are smaller nations, but strategically very important.